Hello, sanbonani bakithi, dumelang bathong, molweni, goeiedag. For those of you who have not met me, my name is Mamokgethi Phakeng. I'm a professor of mathematics education here at UCT and the 10th Vice-Chancellor of the university. It is my pleasure to welcome you to this event in honor of South African Women's Day. I extend a special welcome to our friends who are attending from across South Africa and all over the world. You may be elsewhere on the African continent, or perhaps in Europe, North America, somewhere in Asia, or down under, Australia or New Zealand. You are all welcome. Thank you very much for joining us. Today, we will celebrate with poetry, music, and messages of hope. I want to start by thanking the UCT choir and the video production crew in our communication and marketing department for the very moving video we just watched. I have watched it several times, and every time I see it, it moves me. The choir's rendition of the traditional Zulu hymn, Tumamina, which means send me, honors all the frontline workers at the coalface of the COVID-19 pandemic. Today, the song also reminds me of the global battle for gender equality. Imagine hearing Tumamina without the women's alto and soprano voices. Just imagine it without the men's voices, the tenors, the basses, supporting the melody and the rhythm of the song. It's a combination of voices that provides the rich harmony that reaches right into our hearts. In a similar way, we all share responsibility for building gender equality, men and women. This does not mean that women's voices will drown out the men. It does mean that women's voices need to be heard along with men's voices in every sector of our society. To live our fullest lives as human beings, we need to make room for each person to grow and lead where they can. This truth we are comfortable with at UCT. You see, this university is one place where women lead at all levels of management, including in the crucial governance, ceremonial, academic, and executive roles. But around the world, people still have to learn this truth. Well, of course, around the world, people talk about this, but they still have to learn the truth and live it. I've had young men express the worry that there would be no opportunities for them in sectors like engineering if companies focused on hiring women. According to the masculinity of power, if someone starts to rise, that means another person will have to fall. That's how the masculinity of power works. But we need to disrupt that way of thinking for the simple reason that it is not true. The fact is, women's empowerment as full human beings is good for all people, men included. It is good for the companies that hire and empower women leaders. This is supported by research that has been done all over the world. We are not rising as women to make men fall. We are not rising in order to lower standards, but we are rising because humanity needs the resources women can bring to help make a more just, and equitable, and sustainable world. We can also make the world profitable, more profitable than it is right now. McKinsey & Company reports that despite making up 50% of the population, women generate just 37% of global gross domestic product. Yet, women are hugely influential when it comes to making purchasing decisions. A 2018 survey concluded that women globally spent about 40 trillion US dollars. But we are not contributing to the economy to our full potential because around the world, women are held back by the masculinity of power or the power of masculinity. There is a false perception that the power of human beings resides in masculinity. It is the same kind of thinking that for centuries said that only men were capable of scientific thinking or artistic expression or financial expertise or political power. Not only is that way of thinking untrue, in fact, it is as unhealthy for men as it is for women. A 2014 United Nations report on gender issues says that throughout the world, gender roles compromise men's health by encouraging them to equate being manly with various risky behaviors, from multiple sexual partners and alcohol consumption to the use of physical aggression and the unwillingness to seek health services or emotional support. You see, the power of masculinity makes men think that they have to behave a certain way, talk a certain way, and think a certain way. Women and people who identify as homosexual or transgender tend to feel that they also have to conform to the masculinity of power in business and in professional settings. In fact, many professional settings, when they talk about professionalism, they're talking about being masculine. This squashes the potential for creative thinking that diversity can bring. On the other hand, studies around the world demonstrate the power of gender diversity across society. Gender diversity in the workplace allows organizations to draw from a wider pool of talent and abilities that can contribute to productivity. Inclusive workspaces tend to have lower employee turnover rates, which helps strengthen institutional knowledge and the culture while saving on the cost of recruitment, because you don't have to keep recruiting new people as people leave. They also are better at reaching markets that reflect different genders, backgrounds, and ethnicities. So exchanging the power of masculinity for the power of diversity is also good for the society in general. Societies that invest highly in the education of women have higher national incomes than those who don't. When a society treats its women and girls well, it has greater stability and prosperity. And the men in those societies benefit as well. Global surveys have shown that men who support gender equality tend to experience a greater sense of life satisfaction, deeper connections with their children and partners, better physical, mental health, and yes, even more satisfying sexual relationships with their partners. So men have good reasons to set aside the power of masculinity in favor of the power of gender diversity. And many men believe this and support gender equality, but sadly, many others don't. We see this in the growing statistics about gender-based violence and in the classic struggles women face in traditionally male environments, especially in science, engineering, technology, and mathematics. And in academic sphere, of course, we know that fact. So in institutions such as the University of Cape Town, it is us who need to take specific actions to help change the old attitudes more quickly and more dramatically. It is for this reason that when I took office 2 years ago, I invited women and trans women researchers to apply for funding worth a total of 22.5 million rand to conduct research and training that would help us rethink our views of gender in South Africa and give us new insights into ourselves and others in other communities. Last year, we awarded these funds in the form of 3 grants of 1 million rands per year for 5 years, and 2 meritorious awards to give to an amount of 750,000 rands a year for 5 years. We gave 2 to those. And I made a commitment at that time that we are going to be accountable. We are not just given these grants. We are going to be accountable to you, the UCT community, for these projects, because higher education provides a unique platform for developing women's leadership in different professional sectors. So we don't want our Women's Day celebrations to be just about what should be or what could be. We want them to be about accounting to you and saying to you, we know what should be and we have our hands around the task. And this is how far we are. And we're using this institutional initiative for women, by women, to do that. So it is my pleasure today to introduce to you the 3 researchers who are using their 5 million Rand grants to advance women in their respective areas of study. They will report to you today on their progress. First is Dr. Katye Altieri of the Department of Oceanography at UCT. And she's working to enable postgraduate Black women and transgender oceanographers to become the leaders of oceanography in South Africa and the Global South. And second, it is Professor Floretta Boonzaier of the Department of Psychology. And she is addressing gender-based violence in South Africa, exploring the question, what does it mean to think differently about research on gender-based violence? Floretta's work is significant for academia because it affects not only our approaches to research in gender and sexuality, but also the ways we think about the purpose of research itself and the benefits that might be derived from it. And thirdly is Professor Janette Hebgood. Janette is in the Department of Molecular and Cell Biology, and her work focuses on improving our understanding of hormonal contraception for women in sub-Saharan Africa, where the most used injectable contraceptive may actually increase the risk of HIV infection by about 40%. Her research has important implications for improving health for women and informing public health policy. I now hand over to these 3 colleagues who are bringing to life the dream that we have in terms of how we as UCT can make a contribution to gender equality. And I'm going to start with Dr. Katye Altieri. Over to you, Kate.
The Ocean Women program was started by the academic women of oceanography here at UCT. As 4 women have advanced to the stage of being principal investigators, we feel we are ideally positioned to change the research culture and to influence the behavior during oceanographic fieldwork. Now is the time for us to use our power to create an enabling environment for Black women to pursue academic excellence in oceanography, which is historically a highly male-dominated field, as many of the sciences are. The aim of the Ocean Women program is to develop a prestigious research and leadership training program for Black women that recruits, retains, and enables success for the next generation of Black women oceanographers. Oceanography in South Africa is a well-developed and well-respected field internationally. We have critical geographic advantages that allow us access to the Southern Ocean, the Agulhas Current, and the Benguela upwelling system. And indeed, we are often asked to represent South Africa, the continent of Africa, and sometimes even the entire Southern Hemisphere in international oceanographic and climate change organizations. The Ocean Women Fellowship is creating a pipeline of outstanding Black women oceanographers to take on these key leadership roles. The objectives of the Ocean Women program are threefold. First, to identify and overcome barriers to the recruitment, retention, and success of these students. Second, to create an environment that enables Black women to succeed in their postgraduate studies and become these national and international leaders. And third, to develop and evaluate the program so that it can be applied more generally, so to other earth science programs in South Africa and even beyond internationally. So in terms of the first objective, the barriers we've identified include both financial, professional, and personal barriers. I can give you a couple of examples. So one of our fellows came here from KZN. Typically, UCT students aren't able to register and receive their bursaries until they arrive on campus, but we were able to provide relocation expenses to support her actually moving here to Cape Town. One of our fellows presented an oral presentation at a prestigious international conference in the United States shortly before lockdown, which we were able to support her presenting there. We provide full bursary supports, additional years, and we make sure that the fellows don't need any additional financing. In terms of professional support, the fellows meet monthly with more senior Black women in STEM fields to provide them the opportunity to network and receive mentoring in a way that us as white women, we can't provide because we don't share the same experiences and difficulties that our Black scientists experience. We've also provided opportunities to develop our fellows as ocean women more literally. One of our fellows is pursuing her skipper's license and becoming so that she can captain small boats. To address the second objective, we've worked with transformation and diversity consultants to hold focus groups with all Black women who have come through our department. We have other workshops ongoing that are now taking place virtually with the other postgraduate students and staff in the department. And we aim to transform the whole culture of our department and confront the difficult issues that need to be confronted to make sure that we can create an environment that enables success. The Ocean Women program has a large online following and a social media presence with over 500 followers on Twitter less than 1 year in. And indeed, it's one of our fellows who's receiving science communication training. He's actually in charge of these social media accounts. So we continue to co-produce the Ocean Women program with the fellows. And we think the success of the program is due primarily to the outstanding women who are our fellows. So to close, it is with great pride that the Ocean Women Fellows will introduce themselves to you in these following videos. And please watch this space because the women you're about to meet are the future leaders of oceanography and climate sciences in South Africa and beyond. Thank you for the opportunity to share our program with you.
I study aerosols at the interface of the ocean and atmosphere from observational data collected in False Bay, South Africa. The aim of this study is to improve our understanding and characterization of aerosols that serve as input to prediction models for climate change. The sterling support and excellent exposure that I get from the Ocean Women program help to keep me motivated to succeed in my academic career.
I'm a final year PhD candidate in oceanography. My research is part of a growing body of work that critically examines biogeochemical cycling in the ocean, particularly regions that are currently undersampled. Ocean Women has advanced my academic journey as resources and quality funding are offered. The mentor-mentee program enriches my way of thinking as a Black woman in science and has broadened my mind regarding possibilities I could create with my expertise.
My project focuses on primary productivity in the Benguela upwelling system. I feel honored that I am a woman who is being empowered by Ocean Women. Being part of the Ocean Women has given me the opportunity to advance my academic career and develop invaluable skills in oceanography.
I am a second-year master's student in ocean and atmospheric science, and I tend to experience a lot of inertia when it comes to thinking about the future and my career. And so being part of a dynamic group of women who are on mission and who are optimistic about what they have to offer has really encouraged me and given me that spark. And just to take initiative and to develop a greater sense of ownership over my path.
Hi, and happy Women's Month. My name is Thando Mazomba and I'm a marine scientist. My research focuses on assessing climate model outputs in the Southern Ocean in the last century using historical commercial humpback whale catch data. Being an ocean woman has encouraged me to continue to seek barriers that need to be broken in the scientific field. It has also reminded me that I am allowed to take up space and that where possible, I must strive to create that space for more minorities in the field.
Good afternoon, everyone. Our project aims to take stock of where we are almost 3 decades into democracy in tackling gender-based violence in South Africa by addressing some of the following questions. How collectively do we understand how and why women are violated in their homes, places of work, and in the public domain? How do we understand how women become victims and why men perpetrate violence? Who do we think is responsible for the violence? What stories do we tell ourselves and others about why this violence happens? How do these stories about violence circulate in media discourse and in the everyday? And how does it shape our responses to victims and perpetrators of violence? How might we critically reflect on the knowledge we've produced about gendered violence? Has this work been complicit with injustice? And has it simply circulated and recycled stories of pain and damage? Have we as academics produce narratives that position those on the margins as violent and dysfunctional, while letting violent systems off the hook. How has the work we have done on violence with victims and marginalized communities enabled those communities and individuals to preserve their dignity or to feel empowered? Or has this work been extractive, exploitative, disrespectful, and dehumanizing? It is in response to these provocations that we ask, what does it mean to think differently about research on gendered and sexual violence in South Africa? How can academic research on violence contribute to social change that advances gender equity and non-violence? How do we work against dehumanizing discourses and practices, while at the same time work towards producing knowledge that can make a meaningful change in the lives of girl children, women, and gender non-conforming persons who are affected by racist, patriarchal, misogynistic, and homophobic violence? You will hear from current students who are involved in the project, but over the past year, we have been engaged in a number of activities. These include the completion of research on young women's understandings of sexual consent, research on rape survivors' experiences of counseling, a digital storytelling project on young women's narratives of gender-based violence, and life history research with survivors of intimate partner violence. We provided input into the draft policy framework to address gender-based violence in the post-school education and training system. We workshopped with the National Institute for Crime Prevention and the Reintegration of Offenders around their approach to working with perpetrators of intimate partner violence. And finally, we curated an exhibition of narrative, sound, and images entitled Intersecting Violences. The exhibition interrogated the ways in which violence intrudes into the fabric of South African society, into everyday life in homes, communities, schools, streets, and institutions, and how it shapes the lives of young people. I'm grateful to the Vice-Chancellor for initiating the funding that makes this work possible. And now hand over so you can hear from some of the students on the project. Thank you.
My research is about gender-based violence in South Africa. I'll be focusing on the narratives of women and more specifically mothers who experience violence from their sons. I believe that this form of violence, son-to-mother violence, have not been given any attention in academia in South Africa. And by exploring this form of violence, it will not only raise awareness on the issue, but it will also allow us to acknowledge this form of gender-based violence.
My work is about intimate partner violence in the context of relationships among men. I push back against the boundaries of our current knowledge about gender and its implication in violence by looking at patriarchy, for example. Within a man are enactments of femininity as well as masculinities, and I seek to understand how such constructions of gender have an implication on one's understanding of being a man after enacting violence or experiencing it.
There is a lot of literature on both racialized violence and gender-based violence, but not much of the research has focused on the violence Black women experience as a result of their intersecting social identities as Black and as women. My research focuses on the gendered dimensions of racism in contemporary South Africa.
My research is focused on gender-based violence, but more specifically, women's shelter residences' experiences of gender-based violence, a digital storytelling project. The aim of this study is to find out the personal experiences and narratives of a group of women who reside at a gender-based violence shelter situated in Woodstock, Cape Town. The approach of the study, digital storytelling in this case, seeks to interrogate the daily discourses of gender-based violence in South Africa, and also to see how it might manifest and if there are possible ways that we could eradicate gender-based violence in South Africa.
My name is Kajal, and I will be doing my MA research project with NECRO, an NGO which works to reintegrate criminals into society. they have an intimate partner violence intervention program, and I will be working with the people, well, the men who attend that program and their partners. So I hope through qualitative research I'll be able to look deeper into what underpins intimate partner violence in South Africa, and to begin to understand what discourses programs like NECRO's program need to employ in order to replace or even displace those discourses which uphold gender-based violence and intimate partner violence specifically.
My research, which centers around the experiences of youth in Mitchell's Plain, asks youth to represent their own intersectional identities as well as narrate their own experiences of living in and navigating their environment. This kind of research attempts to challenge dominant narratives around youth in South Africa by not adhering to a risk paradigm which often intends to identify criminals while they are young or identify victims while they are young, but rather attempts to challenge dominant narratives about young people in South Africa, their behaviors, as well as their relationships with each other and their communities.
Hello, everyone. It is my great pleasure to tell you a little bit about our research on choice of contraception for women and girls at risk of HIV infection. Now, as you probably all know, there are many different forms of contraception available worldwide. However, in sub-Saharan Africa, the most widely used contraceptive is the injectable contraceptive Depo-Provera, used by about 20 million women. The active ingredient in this contraceptive is called MPA. In South Africa, there are also very few choices, and about half of contraceptive users use the injectable contraceptives. Besides Depo-Provera, there's another contraceptive available called NET. So remember MPA and NET. So what's the problem? Well, clinical studies have suggested that MPA, but not NET, increases HIV infection by about 40% relative to no contraception or condom-only usage. This is an enormous effect and potentially has a huge impact on the epidemic. So my research is about trying to understand how and why this may occur. And my expertise are in the field of hormones and receptors. So it turns out that these contraceptives are all steroids, and they act via binding to specific receptors inside the cell. Unfortunately, they not only bind to the progesterone receptor, but they also act via off-target receptors, such as the cortisol receptor. Now, you probably all know that cortisol has profound effects on immune function and many other physiological processes, and has the potential to repress immune function and our ability to fight infections. So this brings me to our hypothesis. Our research is based on the hypothesis that MPA, but not NET, may result in different effects on HIV infection due to the different actions via these receptors inside the cell, which could increase HIV infection in the case of MPA. And our work involves investigating this hypothesis. We use two main strategies. The one arm is we have clinical samples from women on MPA or NET. And the other arm of the work is that we perform mechanistic studies in the lab in culture, where we take cells and tissue, and we do experiments to understand what's actually happening inside the cells with MPA and NET. This is a very powerful strategy because it allows us to compare the mechanistic insights we obtain in the lab with the actual clinical samples from the women and to find out what's actually going on. So we've made quite a lot of progress to date. We've shown that MPA but not NET increases HIV infection in vitro in the lab. And what very interestingly we found is that one of the co-receptors for the virus, which allows it to get into the cells, is actually increased MPA and not with NET. So all our results thus far suggest that MPA may increase HIV infection and that NET may be a better choice of contraception. So this is a very exciting project, and one of the reasons that I like it is that it's very interdisciplinary and translational. So while it focuses on basic science and how things work inside the cell, it also allows a lot of interaction with other disciplines, for example, clinicians, epidemiologists. It also brings in fascinating ethical issues, and of course is very important for public health. And we have worked together with the WHO on some issues to do with public health. And lastly, and most importantly, the project is very important in terms of rights of women and girls for safe contraception. Thank you for your attention.
I love my research because I get to merge my passions for people, science, and problem solving together. My project focuses on understanding how contraceptives may change the levels of the hormone estrogen, which may then affect how easily women are infected with HIV. So I love that I get to solve real medical issues that affect women, and I find that very empowering both for myself and other women at large.
Hi, I am Johnson Maliki, a postdoctoral fellow investigating whether hormonal contraceptives alter the expression levels of HIV entry receptors and target cells. My passion is to use basic science concepts to solve or at least explain these issues. I hope to use the knowledge and skills I have acquired throughout my studies towards this goal. I love what I do because my research has the potential to influence policies regarding the safety of hormonal contraception available to women at risk of HIV infection. That is why I became a scientist. Happy Women's Day.
Growing up, I was fortunate enough to have received an education which exposed me to the many aspects that make up science. And regrettably, a woman in science is a rarity, and even more rare is a coloured woman in science. Being a curious child, I was attracted to the field at a very young age, and it was this curiosity that pushed me to where I am today. My research focuses on the dual administration of contraceptives and ARVs and how this may influence normal female reproductive function. I'm the first person in my family to be pursuing my PhD, and as a woman of colour, I hope to inspire many more girls to join me in this ever-changing and evolving field of knowledge.
My project looks at the metabolism of progestins and ARVs in human cervical tissue. I love science because I enjoy planning experiments and learning more about molecular processes with each result. I also enjoy being in a field where I can work with my hands and be mentally challenged and grow. Being a first-generational postgraduate isn't easy, but doing what you love every single day is unmatched.
I'm Malisha Khokomane, your regular girl from the hood who always dreamt of contributing something to the world. Now I get to. I'm a final year PhD student in molecular and cell biology with my research focused on the safety of progestins used in contraceptives and how they interact with steroid receptors and the implications this might have on HIV. Being a part of a team doing science for women by women brings me closer to my dream of enabling safe and viable healthcare options for women across the world.
Wow, thank you so much, Dr. Katye, Altieri, Professor Floretta Boonzaier, and Professor Janette Hebgood. Thank you for giving us this glimpse into some of the complexities experienced by African women, and thank you to the work that you're doing to develop new leadership, new women leadership that will take after us. My hope is that there will be more of them. They will be stronger than we are. And I can see from their inputs today that you're doing exactly that, getting our women into areas of science where we are least represented. Now we will hear from Siphokazi Jonas. Siphokazi, of course, is a member of the UCT family, and she's with us every year as we check in, as we account to you about the work that we're doing. We love Siphokazi Jonas. She was crowned the Slam champion at the Cape Town Ultimate Slam event in 2015. She made history in 2016 as the first African poet ever to perform at Rhetoric in Los Angeles, California. That same year, she was the runner-up for the Sol Plaatje European Union Award. She holds a master's degree in English literature from UCT, as well as an undergraduate degree in drama and English. Siphokazi, is so wonderful to see you. Thank you for joining us today. But more importantly, Thank you for giving us a good name, for being who you are, for owning your whole being. It makes us who we are. Over to you, Siphokazi.
Thank you so much, Prof. Fire and ash. When all is mixed to dough, I hold a pinch of every isiXhosa poem I write up to my mother's mouth to knead between her teeth, and we deliberate on dry ingredients. This idiom here, these translations there, those puns here and these ones here. But she is mum on my substitution of self-rising flour for yeast. She knows it is the best I can do in the circumstance of a tongue baked in surrogacy. Every December, in exchange for a Tupperware full of roasted cook tried over coals, I present Umama with English poems to match the decadence of the season. English, with its heavy hand of sugar, corrodes my vernacular. English poems never let me forget that the bowl I work in is borrowed. And so when we break bread at the kitchen table, we slather slices of my mother's tongue with margarine, steer it along a steaming tide of rooibos, or a glass sweating with ice and oros. But I do not know how to make this meal last me all year long. I want to pray in isiXhosa, give us this day our daily bread. But when we commune with you, never let us need grace again. See, these poems are communion with my grandmother's memory, who gathered everything to herself okwenkuni. She was fire in transformation. When she spoke, the world blistered. A lineage of ash, a lineage of women filtered into the throat of a pipe. In the right mouth, the smoke of burning names is a prayer. And she was a lifetime spent skimming the heavens, spreading the sky like cattle hide until it dried under the salt of her gaze. Then she would fold it into ikriya like origami and wrap the Southern Cross around the crown of her head. My grandmother was north to every dream, draped in ululation. Makulu, you might have wished to be a poet before you were mother or wife of so-and-so, trapped as you were between the dark mountain of Verwoerd's embargo on native ambitions and the flooded valley of a world fashioned for the whims of men. Contemplated your resemblance perhaps to the bodies of grain which are ushered into the gluttonous belly of a grinding stone. Makulu, you may have wished for yourself to be a grinding stone, wished for your daughters to be grinding stones. And in night strangled by fire, you imagine this grass mat beneath you to be like a woven page, and you are a praise poem, improvising endless ways to tutor yourself away from this place. Each night, you unsheathe your dreams like blades of dry grass from the rondavel's thatched sky above you. But the wind and the moon declare us gathered around bowls of Womxn, nepapa, nompokoko. See, these are the contingencies that we forge when our grandmothers are food for grinding stones. And in these poems, I'm sifting through meal with my fingers and my back towards the mountain, interrogating history. Interrogate history. Aggravate it. For all the mummies of silence under its fidgeting tongue, aggravated as one might be aggravated by chewing on a rock, because history is a cannibal, already familiar with grinding women and their names into amnesia. And the canon considers itself a temple. But we dare not come to the plinth disguised as sacrifices at home on an altar. We are not here to worship. We are here to rummage under the fidgeting tongue and ask history, who sits by the door? Who bears no invitation at all?
Wow.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Siphokazi. That was powerful. Thank you for always bringing such a powerful message to us. Women's strength can be expressed in so many ways. As our next speaker demonstrates, Dr. Precious Moloi-Motsepe has founded a women's health clinic. She authored a free resource guide for South African women called the Precious Little Book. She helped found the Motsepe Foundation and manage its many philanthropic projects. She launched the Gender Responsive Budgeting Initiative in collaboration with the Ministry of Women, Children, and People with Disabilities, and established African Fashion International to support the local fashion and clothing industry. And this year, she took up office as the Chancellor of the University of Cape Town. And soon thereafter, the pandemic hit, and she announced a 5 million rand donation from the Motsepe Foundation to UCT to help us manage our response to the COVID-19 pandemic. Dr. Moloi-Motsepe expresses her strength through generosity, and I'm so pleased that she can share her insights with us today. Madam Chancellor, what an honor it is to hand over to you at this point for your keynote address.
Wow. Thank you so much, Vice-Chancellor. Siphokazi, what a fantastic rendition. Thank you for honoring the women in our lives. The Vice-Chancellor and Principal, Professor Mamokgethi Phakeng, the Deputy Vice-Chancellor and executives, academics, students, and stakeholders of the University of Cape Town. Good afternoon, Molweni, Goeiemiddag, Dumelang. I'm delighted to join you today on this occasion to acknowledge and celebrate academic excellence, especially by women at this institution. I wish to commence my speech by congratulating all the women academics at UCT, and in particular, Dr. Katye, Altieri, Professor Floretta Boonzaier, and Professor Hapgood, who are all engaged in fantastic and varied research, which addresses the local and global questions of our time. It is important that in our 25 years of democracy, and as we commemorate 64 years since the March to the Union buildings, that the universities anchor the advancement of women in our policies and practices. Universities are well positioned in their ability to influence our society by promoting gender justice, enriching our democracy, and deploying innovative research for economic development. I must commend UCT for doing well in promoting opportunities for women to excel in their talents and leadership. The senior management team of the university bears testament to this commitment. The Student Structures and Leadership Association have a number of women who are bold, gifted, and actively participate in the cooperative governance of this institution. I wish to encourage UCT to continue teaching and engaging scholarship excellence and spotlighting the women in academia who are shining a light for others to follow. I'm excited to welcome Babalwa Ngonyama, UCT's first woman chair of council, and Nazima Mohammed, our new deputy chairperson. I'm equally honored to play a role within UCT's new leadership cohort, especially one that marks such a historic turning point for women's contributions at this institution. I know when Professor Mamokgethi Phakeng announced these ForWomxnByWomxn research grants last year, the purpose was to create spaces for women's voices to be heard within academia. We all know the disheartening figures. Women are overrepresented in enrollments for bachelor degrees, but only 34% of NRF-rated researchers are women. This leaking pipe trend is not unique to higher education sector alone, because it's something that we see within all organizations and across all sectors. When I was asked to deliver the keynote address today, I couldn't help but think back of my days as a medical student. We often talk about medicine as a very feminine industry because care is directly implied in the name, healthcare. Women are groomed to become carers, and the field of medicine has grown to reflect this. Yet this feminization of healthcare, as it is being called, has not translated into more women specializing within the sector. Just last year, we were celebrating South Africa's first doctor oncologist, Dr. Kiurapetsi Tabani. And before that, in 2018, we celebrated the first Black woman in the country to obtain a PhD in internal medicine, Dr. Nolubabalo Unati Ngabelele. And in 2017, we celebrated Dr. Evelyn Moshokwa, South Africa's first Black woman urologist, who became the first woman to head a urology department in the country. Often when we celebrate these achievements, we're not encouraged to continue interrogating and transforming that culture that makes it so difficult for women to achieve these heights in the first place. Now, going back to my days as a student, I remember looking up to many women who were specializing within the medical field at that time. I wanted to be one of them, and I wanted to follow their example. Professionally, my goal was to specialize in women and children's healthcare, and personally, I wanted to have a family. I wasn't willing to compromise one dream for another. Many women in medicine and academia in general, who were my role models, either opted not to have families of their own in order to advance their careers, or if they had children, they would make the difficult and really painful trade-offs in a never-ending balancing act. I found this troublesome because it seemed to me that in order to flourish as an academic, a specialist, or expert in any career, it seemed to require some form of personal, deep sacrifice. Although some men contend with this same dilemma, this opportunity cost, as economists would call it, is a loss unique mostly to women. Feminist scholars such as Amina Mama, Puleng Linkabula, and Pumla Xola have argued that patriarchal cultures, which are often embedded in organizational or institutional cultures of the academy of us or our society, alienates or creates a leaking pipe that restricts women's success. They have argued that institutional or organizational cultures which are patriarchal often undermine women's knowledge and research, or in some cases, underrepresent its value because of limited women's voices within each field. Now, this has implied a need for universities to deliberate on the beneficial opportunities that would manifest if we fostered inclusive academic cultures and communities. And this is why I want to draw attention to culture today and what it really means to create inclusive institutions and communities. A minimal number of women in history have been able to reach greatness in their professional lives. And although this is changing, the change is still very slow. At our current pace, the World Economic Forum reports that it will take us, Sub-Saharan Africa, 95 years before we close our gender gaps. When I began my studies, again in women's health, I started a family and juggled childcare with my work. I am so shocked that more than 30 years later, there still isn't much institutional support given to women during this make or break time of their careers. I think this is the reason why we celebrate the women who do overcome all odds to achieve professional success. And my observation around the challenges that women face is what inspired me to support women's work and the work of others who are promoting knowledge and innovation to transform our societies. In the field of medicine, doctors become witness to many heartbreaking circumstances. I saw women who waited too long to seek treatment because of economic hardships. I also witnessed women who, despite needing regular health care, consistently overlooked their own needs because of the responsibilities they had at home to care for others. The notion of childcare being solely a woman's duty not only hinders women's choices in life by making them choose between having a family or having a professional life, but it also perpetuates stereotypes about a single identity of what it means to be a woman. And less acknowledged is the impact that this has on the identity of men who are robbed of the role of caregiving. Creating inclusive spaces for men to embrace other facets of their identity could be a solution to gender-based violence, as men and women become equal partners within their households. Society does not always acknowledge and reward care and domestic work within the home as a formal economic activity, even though it is the foundation that upholds our entire economic system. If we're ever going to transform our systems and transform our institutional and organizational cultures, we have to recognize care work as a public good, not a private one. When women's education and economic activities are not supported, they are less likely to have a voice within academia and less likely to build a critical mass within economic and political decision making. In building this inclusive culture, we have to ask ourselves, could flexibility be the answer? Just about 4 months ago, I was supposed to deliver my first address to the UCT community at my installation ceremony. As we all know, the ceremony and the preceding graduations were cancelled because of COVID-19 pandemic. And a lot of what I wanted to talk about has become our current reality. In planning for my installation speech, my thinking was focused on the fourth industrial revolution and how this new era of intelligent technology would affect education in terms of the knowledge and skills that we value and the new mediums of learning we would embrace. Now, as we all attend this event virtually, and I reflect on my online meetings and you on your online learning, there has been a drastic shift in the way we work and the time we're able to allocate. I'm now getting emails at early hours in the morning and late at night because our 9-to-5 routines have been broken down. In my virtual meetings, I see children run around in the background, and we've all, to some extent, been forced to comprehend the trade-offs involved in caring. Those with little children at home or those looking after sick family members are finding it difficult to do it all while trying to maintain a standard of work that came naturally before the pandemic. In their recent report, Oxfam suggests that the hours that women and girls around the world put into care work is equivalent to 3 times the economic contributions of the global technology industry. Oxfam calculates this figure using a minimum wage, yet if it were calculated based on the incomes generated by each household where women provide unpaid care work, it is likely that the women's contributions would be valued much higher. I want to emphasize this estimated worth of about $10.8 trillion a year. because we are hardly in an economic position globally to lose that much economic value. On the one hand, some people suggest that it may not make economic sense to pay women for their currently unpaid work overnight, but it may make more sense to find ways of acknowledging and removing this burden from women within our institutions and organizations by making it a public investment in our collective progress. We have seen South Africa's inequalities laid bare during this pandemic. The inequalities that were concealed in the physical lecture halls are no longer hidden as UCT adjusts to remote learning. UCT has done well to transition to online learning, and the support we give to students now who are under-resourced and overwhelmed will determine their ability to participate in building our future. The goal of making academia more diverse speaks directly to our need for more women within the natural sciences, mathematics, technology, and engineering fields. In this new era, these fields are shaping our societies, and they are playing a leading role in the global progress towards sustainable socio-economic goals. In this knowledge economy, I believe the traditional groupings of countries as either developing or developed will be broken down. We will instead be analyzed by the creativity and the innovativeness we bring in solving the challenges that we face. But it will be impossible to create this new knowledge economy without inclusive culture and support systems. The research we've heard about today, which is truly remarkable, is extremely valuable to me because of the work that I do at the foundation. At the Motsepe Foundation, we work with communities across the country. We have partners around the world, and together we're trying to construct scalable projects that will bring about socio-economic well-being for all. At the foundation, we know that this mission, which emphasizes for all, cannot be achieved alone, and it certainly will not be achieved without diverse voices and contributions. My hope is that UCT continues to build on this culture of collaboration, where mentors and leaders nurture the ambitions of all their students by recognizing the unique challenges and circumstances they each face. It is only by understanding the root of the problem and embracing the diverse voices of those who are most impacted that we will be able to recreate systems of support. A responsive system that accommodates the needs of everyone is the only way to cultivate a culture of inclusivity. I want to leave you with a quote from Mae Jemison, the first African-American woman astronaut to go to space. And she says, "Don't let anyone rob you of your imagination, your creativity, or your curiosity. It's your place in the world. It's your life. Go on and do all you can with it and make it the life you want to live." Thank you all for being here today. Thank you, Vice-Chancellor. And thank you everyone for using your imagination and your talents to create the world you want to see. As we celebrate Women's Month, I wish to thank the women and men who are willing to be part of the solution. I thank you.
Thank you so much, Chancellor. Thank you for an inspiring message, an encouraging message, for your wise words, as always. We really appreciate having you as our leader. I always tease the Chancellor and say she's our Pope. So we really appreciate your presence, the professionalism that you bring, the depth of knowledge, the care, and the inspiration that you are in what you say to us, but also in what you do and who you are and your being in society. We really appreciate your being with us. Our celebration of women's power continues with a jazz medley performed by the Kamva Quintet, featuring Lana Crowster on lead vocals, Tracy Lee Johannes on guitar, and Claire Roch on saxophone, Shante Phillips on drums. All of them are UCT alumni, and it's directed by Amanda Tiffin, the head of jazz studies at UCT, who's on the keyboard. Over to you, Kamva Quintet.
To all the beautiful queens out there, happy Women's Month. Whatever you want, whatever you need, anything you want done, baby, I'll do it naturally, 'cause I'm every woman, it's all in stand and fight for all my dreams. I never thought this journey would be painless, but I found out life is harder than it seems. Kwazi ma kodwa ixesha liyaphilisa. I'm gonna fight back, I'm gonna rise up, not gonna give up, I'm gonna stand up. The bitch, U-N-I-T-Y. You gotta let them know. U-N-I-T-Y, that's a unit. Instinct leads me to another flow. Every time I hear a brother call a girl a bitch or a hoe, trying to make a sister feel low, you know all of that got to go. Now everybody knows there's exceptions to this rule. I don't be getting mad when we playing what's cool, but don't you be calling me out my name. I bring back to those who disrespect me like a dame. That's why I'm talking. One day I was walking down the block, I had my cut off shorts on right, 'cause it was crazy hot. I walked past these dudes when they passed me. One of them felt my booty, he was nasty. I turned around red, somebody was catching conversation left. Since he was with these boys who try to break fly, I punched him dead in his eyes. Who you calling a bitch? All my ladies, listen up. If that boy ain't giving up, make your lips and swing your hips and all you gotta say. My name is no, my sign is no, my number is no. You need to let it go. You need to let it go. You need to let it go. Nah to the I to the no, no, no. I ain't bragging, 'cause I'm the one. Just ask me who shall be done. Don't bother to compare. I've got it. I'm every woman. I'm every woman. I'm every woman. I'm every woman. I'm beautiful in my way. 'Cause God makes no mistakes. I'm on the right track, baby. I was born this way. Don't live yourself in regret. Just love yourself and your sin. I'm on the right track, baby. I was born this way. Ooh, there ain't no other way, baby. I was born this way. Baby, I was born this way. Ooh, there ain't no other way, baby. I was express yourself. Baby, I was born this way. Girls, we run this mother. Hey. Girls, we run this mother. Hey. Girls, we run this mother. Hey. Girls, we run this mother. Who are we? What we run? The world. Who run this mother? Who are we? What we run? The world. Who run this mother? Who are we? What we run? The world. Who run this mother? Who are we? What we run? We run the world. We run the world. Girls.
Wow, 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 wow. Kamva Quintet, that was beautiful. Thank you, thank you, thank you so much. So proud to be part of the UCT community. Who said you can't have it all? Maybe not, but we have most of it. Kamva Quintet, thank you so much for the music. When they told me it's like about 5 minutes, I was like, wow, 5 minutes on video. Wow, I didn't think I'd be dancing this much and just going up and down with energy. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you so much for that rendition. Well, last month, I was happy to announce that the Council of the University of Cape Town, which is responsible for steering UCT at the governance level, is now being led for the first time by a woman chair, Ms. Babalwa Ngonyama. She's the founder and chief executive officer of Sinayo Securities. Her sterling career in the financial services sector spans more than 2 decades, including leadership positions at Safika Holdings, Nedbank, Brand South Africa, and Balu World Group, and board positions at Aspen and Hollard Life. She is passionate about transforming the financial sector. Of course, she's a groundbreaker herself in the stockbroking world, which is dominated not just by masculinity of power, but also by white privilege. Sinayo Securities training program, Project Funda, has so far assisted more than 60 university graduates to start their own careers. She's also the founding chair of African Women Chartered Accountants, which aims to accelerate the development of Black women in the field. Ms. Babalwa Ngonyama will deliver a closing message. We've recorded the message because she's not able to be with us online live, and we will now hear her closing message.
Molweni, Dumelang, Goeiedag. Good afternoon to all UCT amazing women. It gives me great pleasure to be part of a leading African university with a heralded global reputation such as the University of Cape Town, a university that celebrates women, recognizing their achievements and creating ways for them to reach their full potential. I join UCT at a time when it has strong, intelligent women holding crucial governance, ceremonial, and executive role. I joined UCT in a year that the Vice-Chancellor, Professor Mamokgethi Phakeng, as well as the former and current Chancellors, Mrs. Graka and Dr. Precious Moloi-Motsepe, were named among the Africa's 50 most powerful women by Forbes Africa. Women who are reshaping history and closing inequalities. It is an honor to be part of this team. And whilst we are acknowledging strong women, let's not forget the young women who were 4 of the top 5 achievers in the civil engineering class of 2019. Young students who said it can be done and went ahead and aced their studies in a field dominated by men. These are the women worth celebrating because they keep soaring high in spite of living in a patriarchal world that can second-guess women, a world where women live in fear of not knowing if they will live to see the next day due to the gender-based violence, a world where they have to work twice as hard as men to be recognized. Today, 64 years after thousands of brave women challenged the status quo, Batswara Tepa Kafa Bu Khaleng, meaning holding the sharp end of the knife. As a Setswana proverb says, Professor Mamokgethi Phakeng is nudging us to say, let's adopt the brevity of those 1956 women and rewrite the narrative. Let's close the inequalities. When she launched these scholarships in 2018, she hoped they would help us rethink our views of gender in South Africa and give us new insights into ourselves and others in different communities. This speaks to the phrase we've all come to know so well in South Africa, Umuntu ngumuntu ngabantu. You are because of others. And with this initiative, the Vice-Chancellor has reminded us as women that we do need each other. We are women because of other women. Women by women. Vice-Chancellor, I salute you for this progressive vision. You saw a gap, and instead of turning a blind eye, you realized that there was a need to encourage women to conduct research in fields where women are in short supply, to add women's voices to fields of research where men remain in dominance. I'm also happy that you don't stand alone. I would like to acknowledge the strong executive team you have around you and UCT Chancellor, Dr. Precious Moloi-Motsepe, who does amazing work with women in areas of education and health. I believe, as the African proverb says, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. When we stand together as women, we will certainly achieve more. To the grantees, Dr. Katye Altieri, Professor Floretta Boonzaier, and Professor Janette Hapgood, I salute you for the work that you do, but also for taking on this challenge. Your research covers topics of interest in South Africa and the world in general. I believe your outcomes will be impactful and add value to our lives for generations to come. I wish you well. To everyone in attendance, I thank you for also making this possible. Without you, this event wouldn't have been a success. A big thanks to the technical team and everyone who worked behind the scenes to ensure that this event is a success. I thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much to our Chair of Council, Ms. Babalwa Ngonyama. As we draw to the end, let me also say thank you to the team that I lead UCT with, Professor Loretta Ferris, Associate Professor Les Lange, Professor Sue Harrison, Dr. Reno Mora, Mr. Royston Pile. Thank you very much for the work that we do together. We can only drive transformation together. The team of deans, executive directors, thank you for the work that you do in faculties and in departments. And thank you to the ICTS team for making sure that we don't put our foot wrong technologically, for making sure that this event proceeds smoothly. And then to the super team, CMD, Gerda, Olwen, Kylie, Nina, Aloy, Colleen, Rosina, and everyone in CMD. Thank you so much for the work that you do to manage the logistics, to bring all of us together, to make sure that we are all on cue at the right time. And thank you to all of you, to each one of you who joined us for this celebration today, wherever in the world you're joining us from. Thank you. The pandemic makes it necessary to meet online, but that also creates the opportunity for us to touch lives that are far away. I'm so glad that we've been able to connect in this way. May you each take away from this virtual event a real sense of what you can do to help create a more just and equitable world for all people. Thank you very much for joining us. Have a good day further.